international students and diaspora peoples. That is, peoples from another country now living in your country, either temporarily, like international students, or more permanently, like immigrants and refugees. This session is being sponsored by the Anglican International Student Ministry Network, and we welcome our people live streaming. So we've got live audience and you that are tuning in. But this session is sponsored by the Anglican International Student Ministry Network, and we exist to connect, mobilize, and to resource Anglicans to love, serve, and learn from international students to the glory of God. All right. You know, Proverbs 16:9 says, a man or woman, we make our plans, but God directs, sometimes redirects our steps. Perhaps you've experienced that. I did over lunch today, just before we came here. As I was lining up to get my food, you know, we've been talking about in this conference, be the one and see the one. So in front of me was somebody that I thought maybe from another country. We got acquainted. I found out he was an international student from Ghana, flew into Tallahassee, Florida to start school at Florida State University. Upon arrival, he met his contact, who was making arrangements for him to stay at a home, set him up at school, needing more money. Long story short, it was a scam. He was victimized. He was robbed, not maybe at gunpoint or knife point, but through this scam. He became homeless. This homeless student, fresh off the plane in Tallahassee, Florida, was freezing out in the rain. Well, maybe Florida, not freezing. He was being drenched with the downpour. I need help. He's raising his hands. So we've been reminded in this conference, see the one. And there was this good Samaritan driving down the road. Happened to be a church woman, as we've been hearing about. Trafficked people, victimized international students. This woman is driving, she sees the hand, pulls over, finds out the situation and says, my husband will get you. She saw the one. Sixtus, please come up, and Bill. Our session was disrupted. Originally, my wife and I were going to talk to you about 2 Anglican churches that we helped start an international student ministry. You won't lose out. That'll still happen. Not in person. You'll have to come back another time and check in on a video that I'll show you about. Just the introduction to a video where we succinctly summarize the essential ingredients to begin a ministry among international students in just 15 minutes. You'll be introduced to that video in just a second. We won't watch it because we've got a lot to cover in a short period of time. But God sent 3 angels, 2 that I met in the dining room and 1 that I met as I left the dining room. And I don't see that angel. You're not that angel, right? I didn't meet you? No, okay, well, she hasn't arrived yet. Sometimes angels get stuck along the way, you know? Anyway, Sixtus and Bill, 2 of the angels sent by God to give us a message from God. Tell us. Well, I've already given the summary. Because we're so short in time, and by the way, sorry, we want to go back. We want to see you. Hold on. See, we're kind of thank you, everybody, for watching in and bearing with us. There we go. Okay. I'll make sure they can see you, so get over there. I've already shared kind of your situation. Long story short, God, because he was ministered unto by the body of Christ, has impressed upon him to share his brokenness and victimized experience with others. Tell us, what is God laying on your heart about how you want to care for other immigrants, other international students, and what he has done? Just kind of give us a summary.
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's been a huge blessing from God to just have life and to live and to be with people that believe and listen to God. You know, like he rightly said, you know, I came here and, you know, in a very unfortunate situation that I, never really planned for. But God has his own plans, being fortunate enough, I met wonderful people that took me over, and then changed my life entirely, followed God's plan in my life. And then I realized that this was just more beyond just me, or just more beyond just me having a better situation for myself or getting a solution for myself. But I realized that there was more I could do out of this experience, which is sharing this grace that I received with so many other people that were in my community that were either going through what I'm going through, or probably also in maybe even worse situation than I was. And through my experience with Father Bill and St. Peter's, we're able to offer same help to so many other students who were also in same and similar situation as I was. And today I'm really excited that these guys are far much better than they were in the past years and in the past time. And I'm just grateful to God. I'm grateful to God so much that because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be here. Like you rightly said, I didn't know what was going to happen when I was stuck in that rain. I didn't know if someone else was going to come in. I didn't know, but God is always good, and God will continue to be God for who it is.
Amen.
And he showed up, and he showed up because someone decided to be the one, and someone decided not only to be the one, but to share the one with me.
Amen.
And today I have that opportunity of sharing, that same grace that was given to me to all these other people. And Father Bill will share more of that.
Before he does, God's given you a dream on how you might do that. And you did, what's this thing you did and you're going to get some award for in San Francisco? Next year?
Yeah. So true, Father Bill, because ever since we met, I said, Father Bill, I want you to be my mentor. I see so much of what God is doing in your life, and I want to be like you. I want to have and preach the gospel like you differently. I tell him that we look in our world today, and there are certain places that we have kind of like neglected the gospel. Talk about place of business, talk about place of entrepreneurship. People are like, okay, those are the business guys, and probably we don't need to preach to them. But I was like, these are people we need to preach to. But beyond that, I was sharing with him, we have so many immigrants coming to this country, and they have so many dreams. But in all of these dreams become shattered by the difficulty and the processes of actually becoming successful in what you think of doing. I shared that there are a lot of other students that, I've been told that the only way you could ever make it is where you get married to somebody in this country, which is probably good for someone. But thinking about it and letting and telling everybody that the only way you can make it is getting married. And so you have people that say, okay, give me some money and I'll get you married to somebody to get you a visa or to get you citizenship. Then I realized that it was really disheartening. Like, so many people were cutting their lives short, were cutting their dreams short, were cutting God's plan on their life short because they others were offering them somewhat cheaper or easier way to make it, which wasn't a right way. I had so many friends that felt like this was the easier way to go. Like, I know I want to do something better, but I can't do it because this is difficult. And so one of the ways I said I want to stand out was to, get into entrepreneurship, not only just trying to do something to, not just trying to start a business, but trying to start an avenue that will preach the gospel, an avenue that I could share this good news that I have, and this avenue was one way was, now I have the opportunity to go into San Francisco next month. And part of that is most of these international students that I am with are like, how did this happen? Like, we all saw you 3 years ago, 4 years ago. You just ride here on the street, and then we had no hope in what was going to happen. But now we see so much more. We see so much difference. we see hope. We see that we could also do something like this. We could also transform we could move from where we are now to become better. And that alone is a life-changing story. Like, that is the motivation to what I do. I'm doing what I'm doing because I feel someone else has been inspired. Someone else has been motivated to live a different life. And so
thank you so much, Sixtus. Now, so thank you. So, Bill, I just met him too. I don't even know your last name, but
The Holy Spirit.
hey, come here. Two quick questions.
Certainly.
The impact that Sixtus, oh, by the way, we're talking about one of the purposes of our network of Anglican International Student Ministry Network is to love, serve, and learn from, which we just did. And now, Bill, Father Bill, excuse me. As an old Baptist, I can't get off of that. Okay, two quick questions. The impact this international student had on your and your family's life and your church, please.
Okay. Very short. Yeah, I plan to be that. Listen, you just met one of the most humble human beings I've ever known. Sixtus arrived, and he made an immediate impact. I have 3 daughters that all consider him a brother. I have a wife that considers him a son. I can go on about the family dynamic, the great blessing that I've received from him as a mentor. But I also want to tell you that he's a bold evangelist, that he spends many, many, many hours out in the streets, out in the parks, going and telling people about the Lord. He serves as a subdeacon at our church. He's one of the few black faces in our entire church, but he's there boldly sharing his faith, sharing the love, spurring others on to go out and do the same thing. And that little business that he's talking about, they're venture capitalists offering millions and millions of dollars to Sixtus. He says, no, thank you, but can I tell you about the gospel? That's the human being that stood before you. That's the brother in Christ that we have in Sixtus. And so I would encourage everyone who's watching the video, everyone who's here, just to share the story of the way that these things happen, right? Slowing down, talking to somebody, hearing who they are, and the blessing that the Lord always has in store. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come today.
Absolutely. You didn't know you had an angel assignment today, but you were obedient. We're going to meet the other angel if she ever shows up. I don't see her yet. You're not here, right? The other angel okay. So here, as I mentioned, my wife and I were going to share in person how we helped start the International Student Ministry at 2 Anglican churches. But God had another plan. And so when you go back to our Anglican International Student Ministry Network website, and then you can scroll down. And, we talk about getting connected. There are a lot of links here to other international student ministries that you can get connected to. We got a lot of resources. And one of them is, and you got it in your hand, you got the handout. But for those of you that didn't get the handout, when you scroll down into the resources and you see every international, if you hit that, it'll bring up 35 excellent videos on starting a ministry to international students. And one of those 35 is how local churches can start. And in the providence of God, the person that did that is talking to you. And so the 2 examples we gave are Anglican churches. And if you go to every international, it's a free. You have to log in, but it's free. 35 international student ministry resources. 10, my brother, on ministry among immigrants and refugees. So here we go. But if you go to the one on international students, let's see. So as I mentioned, this is just a little teaser. Go to it, 15 minutes. All the critical, essential elements required or God used to help 2 different churches, one large, one really small, get involved with international student ministry. It's all there. I highly commend it to you. And now another example of an Anglican church involved in international student ministry is, please come up. Many people know you, Denise Cox, with SAMS as a SAMS missionary and leader, but tell us about your church.
Okay. Well, I go. I don't think you have your video back on.
Here. You're right. Thank you, everybody. Let's get back.
Here.
Okay, let's see. No.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Hi. I go to Church of the Ascension, which is an urban church in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we are surrounded by universities like Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh, and Duquesne University. And so we do have in our area a lot of international students. For many years, the church had several members who were reaching out to international students with Bible studies and hospitality and just being nice. But we received into our congregation a woman who had a real heart for this ministry and asked the church leadership, could she start an English language outreach program through the church? I had been praying about such an opportunity myself. And when I saw it in the church bulletin, I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. And I immediately raised my hand to be a volunteer. And I thought probably 5 to 10 students would come. That's what my idea was. So first year we had 60. Now 5 years later, we have, at least 200 a year. We continued through COVID. We have hospitality, fun events, English language classes, all sorts of things. But in addition to that, interesting that Father Bill just left the room. Some time ago, in my role as associate director of SAMS, a young man contacted me saying he really wanted to work with refugees and immigrants to the United States. And I sent him on a journey talking to a lot of people. But in the end, he came back and said, I can't find a church that wants to do this. Well, he had an area code number that was a Pittsburgh area code number. So I said, are you from Pittsburgh? Yeah. I thought, okay. So I took a chance and I went back to the church and I said, here's an opportunity. Could we have a missionary in our church that would complement our international student ministry, but do outreach to recent immigrants and to refugees? And the church said, okay, we'll try it. So it's kind of a pilot project, but he and his wife have come, Rebecca and Daniel Behrens. He's actually doing a map talk. And one of their largest supporting churches just happens to be Father Bill's church, St. Peter's from Tallahassee.
I wonder why.
I just had to tell you that. So anyway, now we also have a new program going in the church, and we are going to start with a local agency in Pittsburgh. They've just started a faith-based, church-based, organizational-based program for settling a refugee, and we're going to be one of the first to do it. So that actually came out of the international student ministry because the church saw students coming to the Lord, being baptized, and said, wow, maybe we could do more. Okay?
And thank you for ending with that. Showed how the church expanded its outreach to include the permanent internationals God is providentially sending to the Pittsburgh area. And I'm so glad she mentioned that, because the first church we helped to start, Truro Church in Fairfax, Virginia, and the ministry is called TIPS, T-I-P-S, for Truro International Program and Services. It began exclusively or focused singularly on international students in the greater Washington, D.C. area. But after a while, it expanded. And the church vestry and leadership felt like, it's wonderful to have the international students, but our community is growing in terms of diversity with so many people from around the world coming in as immigrants, refugees, diplomats, business people, all kinds. We really need to reflect the reality of our immediate community. So today, after 38 years, it's a thriving ministry. And I believe the ministry among the permanent residents has exceeded that of international students. So it started with international students, but it expanded and blended into all internationals or the diaspora peoples. Now, let's see, how much time do we have? We only had 20 minutes, well, technically to present and then to have 10 minutes of questions and answers, but we'll get there real soon. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly show you some more resources, then we're going to switch over to Q&A, but not only Q&A. Be thinking, if any of you are already part of a church that's engaged in international student ministry, I'd love for you to come up and share very briefly about what you're doing. So think about that. So let's go to, back to resources, going to our Anglican International Student Ministry Network. I showed you that. Actually, this lady up there in the pink, Reverend Janet Eccles, She's the rector of that small church of 50 people. And there's a picture of her welcoming the international students from University of South Carolina, giving them an orientation before they began the 24 hours of wonderful time of seeing what the church had to offer and staying in their homes and coming to the next morning for light version, liturgical version in worship service. And then the debriefing. The great thing about the debriefing at lunch the following day is not only the international students sharing what a blessing it was for them, but the church people testified of how they were enriched and what God did in their lives because they hosted international students. So when you go to our AISMN website and you go down and see about learning and so forth, and then you can go to some videos, and there's a beautiful lady. I'd love to meet her. God says we're supposed to love the foreigner. I obeyed. I loved her. I married her and loved her. But anyway, this is her talk, and you're only going to see like. Sorry. So Lisa was sharing at the ACNA Provincial Assembly in 2017 at Wheaton College, where she graduated from years earlier as a graduate student from the Philippines. She spoke for 14 minutes. A person was so inspired by that talk. The next morning, that person called a breakfast, out of which was born our Anglican International Student Ministry Network. So that's one. And she also talks about the two churches. So you have a choice. You can see the one with my face on it, but you can see her face. But hi, everybody. I'm Hawaiian. We're just very relational, like many of you are. Okay, let's go on. Oh, there's another like a uniform. Here we go. You see this? Okay. The Lausanne movement for world evangelization. We developed 4 to 5 minutes, not 45, 4 to 5 minutes on international student ministry. So you can also use that. If you don't want to see 15 minutes, go to the 4 or 5 minutes. But these are some of the resources. And this one here is about Truro Church by a recent director of the TIPS ministry there. And there are so many books and so forth. Some of them, I won't. Anyway, some books. You know what? Seriously, I don't know if this is a word from God, but it's a word from me. It might be from God as well. This one. You know why? This is such a strategic ministry, but not a lot of people are engaged because we don't see it. See the one. See this avenue of global missions at home, reaching the world's future influences God providentially sends to us. It's a blind spot. And that's what we're trying to do is mobilize the church. International student ministry from blind spot to vision. If there's anything besides those videos that you do, go to this paper, just read the first few pages. It'll give you the biblical basis, but the amazing strategic elements. When you see those strategic elements of reaching international students, you're going to say, really, this is one of the most strategic types of global missions we can be involved in. You got to see it. Sorry. Anyway, let's go on. Any of you play Wordle? Sorry, folks around the world. If you don't know Wordle, it's just it's a word game. Okay, hey, let's get back to the mission here. Okay, so anyway, go to these resources. And now I would love for any of you, do any of you have a church-based ministry that's currently going? May I see a hand? Yes, please come up. Come up. How do I get out of there? Okay. And who are you?
My name's Diane Conjure.
Diane. Please come and just share, very briefly about your church's involvement with international students, if you don't mind.
Well, actually, it's thanks to you and your wife, although you don't know me at all. But you know Kurnia and Leon Tho, and you discipled them.
Yeah.
So our church is involved with them. And that's why I'm here, actually.
Okay, well, tell us about it. It's a great ministry.
Right. So Kurnia and Leon Tho are from Indonesia, which is mostly Muslim country. And they came to the States. He came as an international student a long time ago, before they had children. Now they have 5 that range from like 19 to 9. And so he started Global Student Friendship, GSF. Not at our church, a bunch of churches, but then our church is involved too. But anyway, when he started GSF, and the idea was that they start as foreigners, they become friends, and then they become families. And his idea was that, you know, we meet the international students and we befriend them in different ways. And then eventually they become family because that's how close, you know, we've gotten. But he was taught, I think, by you all, by the best of them, because he said to make sure I find you when I'm here. But yeah, it's just amazing because the statistics are that I think it's way less than 10% of international students who come to the United States ever see inside an American home. You might take them shopping, you might take them to church, you might take them, you know, to get their telephone, to get their phone, go to the bank, but they don't actually get into homes. And so the idea is that we have events that they come to because there's free food, right? All students are hungry, right? So lots of food and games and things like that. So they come to these events.